Alright, welcome back everybody. So, we are here. It is week number 4, OWL. So, we got the Houston Homestead, where we got the Outlaws trying desperately to rebound and get a couple of wins on the board for themselves before the season starts to get away from them. And we have the Atlanta Reign in action for the first time this season. Otherwise, we have a lot of the same teams that have been performing in weeks 1 or 2. We got Boston sighting Philly, Paris, Florida, as well as London and Toronto. So, should be super exciting today and tomorrow, or tomorrow and Sunday, I should say. Um, so, without further ado, let's hop right into these predictions. So, New York NYXL taking on Florida Mayhem. New York coming off of a 1-1 week. They are now 3-1 on the season. And then you got Florida, who are 1-1. They only played in week number 1, so they've had a bit of time off. They got a win against the Houston Outlaws and then lost against the Philly Fusion. So, in this one, I like New York. Florida is a tough case for me. I think this is going to be a very interesting weekend with them. For me, it's going to kind of determine where they kind of fall because they did look really solid against Houston, but as we know, Houston is 0-4. And when they played against that upper competition, it really wasn't close. They didn't put up too much of a fight. This is still a talented team. New York is a flawed team. As I pointed out in previous videos, Who Are You has been a bit of a weak spot for them, as well as I think their overall strategy has been lacking in some regards. But I think their strategy will work very well against some of the weaker tiered teams, and I still do believe that's where Florida lies. I think Florida will snag a map, but I'm gonna take New York 3-1. Maybe the first map I could see Florida grabbing, and then New York kind of snowballs it after that. The first in many of their matches, the first half has been New York's weaker point, but with the maps being flipped around every week, that could change this week. But I do like New York winning this one out in the end. They still do have extremely good players. I don't think Florida is as coordinated as a Philly, so I don't believe they'll be able to kind of punish some of the aggressive flanks that guys like Sabi Obi will take. I think that they'll struggle with that a little bit. And while there is still some big pop-off potential on Florida, I like New York's tank line a lot more. And in the end, that's gonna push it over the top for me, where I don't think Florida can upset them here. Can they grab a map? Yeah, I think they can. But in the end, I got New York winning this one, winning their only match of the week, and going to 4-1 on the season. Then we got a great match, probably my most interesting match of the week. It's Toronto taking on Atlanta. So Atlanta, we're one of the strongest teams. They are the last team to beat the San Francisco Shock in a match, dating back to the upper brackets first round of the playoffs for season 2. And it's, like I said, their debut this season. A lot of people have them very high in the rankings. I placed them at number 5 in my power rankings. I think they are an extremely strong team. They should only be a little bit stronger, if anything, than last year. Like I said, the only thing I think that could hold them back is a little bit is that support line. Even though it's good, I think it could be an issue down the line against some of the very top teams with Dogman as well as Masa. Or Kodak, because Kodak is now in the mix again, but I assume that Dogman will be starting, at least at the start of the season. And then Toronto, they are 1-1, coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Philly Fusion, but they looked really solid. Agilities looked improved on the May. It was kind of their first, when they played Paris, they didn't run the May McCree comp that much, which has now turned out to be the predominant composition in the league. And we know about Sureforce's prowess on McCree. He's pretty much the OG McCree player, one of the best in the world. So this is a match of heavyweights. I think Toronto is only going to keep getting better. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to go against them again. I think Atlanta wins this in a very close match. If you want to talk about their DPS, huge pop-off potential. Their tank line is absolutely loaded. I love the acquisitions they made at the end of or at the towards the end of this offseason. They made some of their moves later on, and I just think this roster is. I think it's probably a little stronger than Philly overall. And I think in the end, they're going to just overpower Toronto with a little bit more talent. I'd see it going to 5. I think Atlanta takes it in map 5 just because they have a bit more of pop off potential throughout their entire roster, not just the DPS. And I think that that will lend them to one victory or two on the control maps. Um, so that's my match to watch out for sure. Should be probably the highest level of Overwatch will be played in that match. But I got Atlanta winning their debut of 2020 just barely. Then we got London Spitfire taking on the Houston Outlaws. So London pulled off a pretty thrilling reverse sweep of the Washington Justice to cap off the Justice's Homestead. This is a new up-and-coming team with a lot of potential. They have had a couple of rough matches, like New York won, but they are going against Houston, who desperately needs a win. So I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say Houston wins this one, even though I think London has a bit better read on the meta. I think that they've definitely performed better, as you can see by their records the first couple of weeks. I think right now they probably are a bit of a better team, but I think Houston, they're feeling healthier. They've had a week to just kind of decompress. They did show real signs of being a competitive team against Boston. Granted, it was Boston, one of the weaker teams, but still, there were signs for me. There were a lot of good things happening. Again, it's just McCree. Can they get someone else on the McCree, or can they get Blase's level of play significantly higher? Because that's really what's holding them back. And it's what took them out of a couple of those last fights. But I think they have enough talent in this roster. That home crowd is going to be just totally behind them. And while the home crowd advantage hasn't really worked out for some of the teams so far, I think it will in this match. I think London has the potential to kind of unravel in some matches because of their youth. And because of that, I think Houston takes this one. I'll say a 3-1 on this one. But again, that should be a super interesting match as well. The final match of Saturday's competition. And then going into Sunday, we got the Boston Uprising taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Boston did get that win against Houston. But that being said, I'm going to take Philly in this one. I think it's a 3-0. I don't really see Philly having many problems. They're a very confident team right now. It's their only match of the week, so they're going to be super prepared for it. They haven't really played down to weaker opponents this season. I don't think they will start now. Maybe we'll see Chipsa sighting, potentially, since Boston isn't one of the stronger teams in the league. Maybe we'll see EQO, who has yet to play, in for Ivy. Or maybe they'll just keep everyone in there and get a pretty easy victory. But Boston, there are signs. This is going to be a good test for them because it's a significantly better team than they played in regards to Houston last week. So going to be a big test for them. They lost to New York, and Philly beat New York. So in the end, I think Philly takes it 3-0, and Boston doesn't really have much to say after this match. Next, it's the Paris Eternal, also coming off of a very nice victory. They beat Washington to... Actually, that was the end of the week. How did that go down? Either way, Paris did score a great victory. Their only loss earlier in the season to Toronto, but they are taking on a very good Atlanta team. So Paris, for me, is shaping up to be one of the best teams that I didn't really see coming. I think that they've already done a good job of integrating their assets. Hanbin, who just turned of age and played his first match last week, looked very good on the off-tank role. Like I said, they still got Sparkle waiting in the wings. He'll be there I think in a couple of weeks. I think it's the second half of the year, actually. But they will have him, and he's absolutely insane. I can't wait for you guys to see him in action. But I'd still like Atlanta in this matchup. This is both of the Atlanta matches I think are going to be super competitive, see a very high level of Overwatch. I think Paris gives them a good run. They'll take a map, but I like Atlanta in the end 3-1. But yeah, guys like Ben Best and Nico have really been playing well, and it's a surprising team. I talked about it in my Week 3 recap. I thought they could be a team that's kind of dangerous towards the end of the year, but doesn't win a lot of matches early on, kind of like a Florida or a Washington of last year. But they're winning matches. They're very competitive right now, and I think they're only going to get better. But that being said, Atlanta, top tier team. I think they get it done in a competitive, fun matchup. Then we got London Spitfire taking on Florida Mayhem. This is a this isn't a could go either way game for me. In the end, I think Florida's gonna win it. I don't want to seem down on London, picking them to lose both their matches because there's a lot of good that's been coming out of London in the last couple of weeks. But I like Florida in this matchup just because I like their players for this meta. I think they're very well suited for it. I think their backline's been playing really well, and they have, like I said, when you got guys like Saya Player, there's huge pop-up potential. BQB is already performing better than last season. In the end, I think that those two are gonna just be the difference in a close competitive match. I'll say it goes to 5, and Florida edges it out. And then the finale, we got Toronto Defiant taking on the Houston Outlaws. I think this is a 3-0. I just think Toronto is a lot better than Houston. Um, Toronto, for me, looks like a top 6 of the teams that are playing right now. Houston, number 14. I think the crowd only does so much. There's only so much of an effect, especially if they get a win against London. I think they'll come into it feeling a little bit more confident, and then Toronto's just gonna kind of pummel them early on, and they're just gonna kind of lose all of that momentum and lose all of that confidence that they have in themselves. So, in pretty much across the board, I like Toronto's roster more. I really like their coaching so far. They have adapted to the meta a lot more quickly than Houston has, and it's just a bit of a mismatch, kind of like much like the Philly Boston matchup. It's just one team is better than the other right now by a good margin. So I think Toronto will. Because especially at this point, Toronto could very well be 1-2, and they played really well. So they're going to be super motivated to get that second win. I really like their mindset. They've talked about just having a lot of fun this season, and it's come through. It really seems like they're having a lot of fun in this meta. Kareev is so good on that Ana. I've already talked about Surefour. Beast has been great as a rookie. He's been really, really good. Nevix is solid as usual. This isn't really a team, I think, that's going to have a lot of just bad weeks. Like, you got your Phillies in Season 1 and Season 2 a little bit, and some of your other teams that have just, like London the first couple seasons, super talented, but they would have their off weeks where they seem disinterested. I don't see Toronto being a team having those letdown matches, so they take care of business and send Houston back down to 1-5. So, those are the predictions for this weekend. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Got any big upsets brewing? You think London will take both of theirs? You think Boston scores a big upset over Philly? Or Florida over New York? Curious to see what you guys think. Again, we had a great Homestead last week. Washington was very, very good at hosting. Hopefully, the Outlaws organization is well prepared for it as well. I think we're going to get a tremendous crowd. Houston has a lot of very passionate fans, so I'm excited to watch the matches. Hopefully, you guys are as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have yourselves a absolutely spectacular weekend. And I'll see you on Monday for the Week 4 recap.